Student posted a message on social media threatening gun violence at the school tomorrow.
Within 2 weeks, everybody's going to forget about this. 3 weeks, it'll be almost entirely forgotten. If you go back to Sandy Hook, nobody can remember any details of what happened there. If I would say Sandy Hook to half of the people I meet today, they would have no idea what I was talking about. America has a short-term memory.
Us students have learned anything, it's that if you don't study, you will fail. And in this case, if you actively do nothing, people continually end up dead. So it's time to start doing something.
By and large, we become desensitized as a nation to these incidences. I mean, the fact, depending on where you look, some sites suggest that we've already had 18 school shootings this year. Some would say that it's closer to 12. But nonetheless, I mean, one's horrific enough, and yet I think we, since Columbine in 1999, have just gotten used to these events, and our news cycle moves so quickly anymore that it finds itself as a non-news item. I do think this particular recent shooting in Florida, there's a different element or a different feel to it, because from my understanding, I don't think there's ever been such a youth response as we're seeing in Parkland. And I think that has created a different dynamic this time.
Do you feel that there should be a ban on assault rifles?
No. I do. I think that I don't believe in the banning of all guns, and I understand people's right to own guns, but
I do. I think that some guns are useful and some guns can be safe.
There's already bans on fully automatic machine guns. You can obtain them if you have a federal stamp, but they're very difficult to get, and extensive background checks are done on those.
What is your experience with guns?
I've been a police officer for 32 years, and I was on the SWAT team for 20 years.
I fired a few.
We don't have a lot of guns around, but I do have a lot of friends who go hunting and stuff, so.
My aunt was in the FBI, and so I grew up, and she would show us her gun that she would have to carry on planes and all of that.
What do you believe should be done about mass shootings?
I think that we need a lot more legislation passed to, first of all, stop the gun show loophole that people can buy guns without having permits and background checks done. And I feel that we need to have tighter background checks and just more restrictions so that it's more difficult for people to buy guns, so that only people who deserve to have guns can have guns.
I think that gun-free zones shouldn't exist. They should just be more heavily armed. Places that's gun-free zones are where almost all of the shootings happen because there's nobody to fight back.
There's no easy answer to that. Society has to change. We have to value life more. You hear that statement, guns don't kill people, people kill people. And if we took away all guns, they would find ways, like at 9/11. They can use box cutters in airplanes. They can use fertilizer to make explosives. They just had 33 people stabbed in Japan. Vehicles driving into people. It's our attitude.
I think there's a multi-layered approach that we have to take to addressing mass shootings in this country and in schools. Statistically, we worry so much about terrorism and issues of terrorism. I think it starts by just our semantics of changing how we talk about mass shootings, and I think calling it what it is, domestic terrorism, would add a different weight to how we think about these incidences. I think we have to address the issue of accessibility to guns, the fact that someone can go into the gun store and buy an assault rifle but can't go to the drugstore and buy a can of beer, that seems problematic to me.
Why do you believe that there are so many guns in America?
I believe there's a lot of guns in America because we have a culture that says that defending yourself is a good thing to be able to do, and also because it's one of the few countries that allows you to do this.
We have protection, target shooting, and hunting. Any combination of the three.
I feel like because there's an amendment, it's gotten to the point where gun violence is almost a partisan issue, and so for the most part, a lot of Republicans are getting guns and supporting guns just because the issue has blown up so much.
I think there's a lot of reasons. I think there's often, I don't want to take anything away from your true gun enthusiasts. I think there are people who just truly enjoy collecting, enjoy hunting. So I think there is a pure reason why there are people who like to collect and own guns. But at the same time, I think there's a more sinister element where organizations like the NRA have stoked a fear in people within our country that depending on who's elected into office, that guns are going to disappear. So
I believe that America is in a cycle of not making a decision when something bad happens. For example, like the mass shooting happened, people talk about it, there's protests, something might come up in Congress, and then after, nothing happens, and then the whole cycle happens again.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with that. Whenever there's a big tragedy or something, the media will push for more gun laws for about a month at most, and then it'll go away and they won't talk about it again until the next school shooting.
I do feel like we as a nation are in a habit of just kind of ignoring it until the next thing happens, that when a mass shooting does happen, the politicians come out with the standard, our thoughts and prayers are with the victims, but because the news cycles are so quick, it kind of gets pushed off, and then we forget about it until the next mass shooting. And so I feel like after the Parkland shooting, they're trying to keep the momentum going so that we can actually have something done before we forget about it again until the next big shooting.
You have a news media that has a specific agenda. They're going to hit you with the most spectacular thing from week to week. They're going to bury us with things that, that's their job, to give us news. But then they take things that aren't newsworthy and blow them up into, things that aren't important. They draw our attention from things that maybe are important. And then you get to a point where there's so much of it. How do we decide, what we're gonna, what's gonna be important to us? What's gonna have actually a long-term effect?
What do you believe should be done about guns in America, if anything?
It's fine the way it is as far as I'm concerned. Other people can disagree, and I don't argue with their right to disagree.
yeah, I want to make it clear, I don't think I'm in a position where I would argue that we need to ban all guns. I think there has to be some common sense gun regulations. Things like banning assault rifles. They call for a universal background check, which again seems kind of common sense to me. Raising the age that one can purchase a gun to the age of 21. Closing the loophole around gun auctions and gun shows, where you can go to a gun show and not have to go through a background check. To me, that seems quite crazy.
We are going to be the kids that you read about in textbooks, not because we are going to be another statistic about mass shootings in America, but because, just as David said, we are going to be the last mass shooting.